One thing that I've noticed throughout my life is that we do not hold women to the same standards that we hold men. If a woman does something screwed up to a man and destroys his life entirely, she can do so without ever having to show any proof. And why is that? Because she's female. It somehow magically makes it okay because she's female. Kind of like this rhetoric we keep hearing from BLM about how every bad thing that ever happened to a black person is all black people's fault. No, it's all white people's fault. It must be my fault for the color of my skin that some black dude in Chicago is victimized or some black dude in California is victimized. It must be my fault because I'm white. That's just insane. It must be my fault that there's police brutality because I'm white. Specifically, only police brutality against black people, because apparently the police don't brutalize anyone else. Yeah, they do. They brutalize the homeless. A man can be convicted on a woman's paranoia easily, but it is extremely difficult to convict a woman even with evidence because most people aren't even going to look at it. Most people have this shit in their head that, oh no, you have to treat a woman with respect. No, you don't. No, you don't. If someone comes on your property and tries busting in your door, it doesn't matter if they're male or female. The Make My Day law is exactly the same. It doesn't discriminate between male and female. Now, although the law on paper doesn't discriminate, police officers are not the law. They're human beings, and human beings do discriminate. Now, how difficult is it to get a conviction against a woman who's a child molester? Pretty difficult. Which is why whenever we see these teachers popped up, these teachers who had sex with their underage students, it always makes me think to myself, the statistics say that there's about 100 other female teachers out there having sex with students for every one that we bust. So you might want to keep that in mind. Now, is this a sexist thing? Well, yes, it is. Is it me being sexist? Nope, I'm being observant. I've paid attention to our society ever since I was a kid. Although I'm not allowed to take part in it, I do get to see it. We've taught women that they are not responsible, that they are not to be held responsible. If a woman lies about you, there are no consequences. If a woman lies about you and it gets you assaulted, there are no consequences. When a woman lies about you and it gets you killed, there are no consequences. Why is this? Because she plays for sympathy on her gender. Just like we have many black people right now who are playing sympathy on their skin color. Well, that's bullshit. Complete bullshit. A lot of folks wanted to pretend like they loved me, pretend like they cared. Shibani Mahumdar. I'm probably pronouncing that way wrong, and if I am, I'm sorry. I'm used to American names. Um, Here in America, we have a lot of people from a lot of different countries, and you get to meet a lot of people with different names, but that doesn't mean that you're going to pronounce it right. From India. Very cool. I have learned a little bit about India, mostly because I really like, well, I like ancient buildings, ancient construction, and India has some of the best in the world. Angkor Wat is a really good study, actually. Um, and that's in India. I can't leave the United States, though. I've been charged with felony assault against a police officer. And although those charges were dropped, they won't let me leave the country because of it. I was charged with a felony. Most nations won't accept me into their countries. Um, one of the big things that actually I enjoy about learning about India, there's a group of women there. These women are special. They were born with both man and woman parts. And these people come to your house if you beat on your wife. Actually, I'd like to look up the name of those folks. I think that's something that's important in cultural practice, something that we here in the United States get to hear about. I was about to say something we here in the United States get to hear about because of the news, but this guy right here typed, what? Really? Well, let's look it up, actually. Um, uh, that's not right. All right. Apparently, there's a bunch of different names. Isra is from Southeast Asia description. In the Indian subcontinent, Hijra are eunuchs, intersex people, and transgender people. Male devotees in female clothing are known as Jagapa. Let's see. And it goes into a lot more of what they do too. Um, let's see. Oh, wow. That is a bunch of words I can't pronounce. Um, just cultural words. Let's see. In the Indian subcontinent, Hijra are eunuchs, intersex people, and transgender people, also known as Aravani, Aruvani, Jigapa, or Shaka. Apparently, that last one is derogatory. The Hijra community in India prefer to call themselves Kinnar or Kinnur, referring to the mythological beings that excel at song and dance. In Pakistan, they're called Hawaja Sira, equivalent for transgender or in Urdu language. But there's a lot of the stuff that those of us here in the United States that learn about, well, a lot of the hatred towards transgenders, a lot of the hatred towards women, and a lot of the abuse and things like that. The thing is that India is very different, just like Russia is very different, um, just like South America is very different. I mean, even the tribes within the United States are very different. These are what we call Indians. They're Native Americans. Some of them have a female only hierarchy where only the woman is allowed to own property. Only the woman is allowed to make the major decisions. And in some of them, the males are actually the hierarchy. Um, the thing is, let's see. I'm sorry. I was not trying to ignore you. I was reading on something, but it says, I am a lady, by the way. What are your thoughts about BLM? Yeah, that happens in the village areas, not in cities. Huh? BLM, I think they were a good idea when they first came out. I think that there were a lot of people who had the same similar ideas that they had about um, we had this thing called Occupy Boulder, Occupy Chicago, and Occupy California, and all that. And it was a very similar thing. But Occupy, we were fighting for our rights as human beings. BLM seems to have a bunch of people that don't know what the hell going on. A bunch of people who think that it's all right to be racist, but only for them. And that's not okay. We're all human beings. It's not more okay for a woman to hit a man. It's just as wrong. But then we have these cultural beliefs that we have ingrained into our brain that women must be coddled, women are to be, well, as if we owe it to them to be their servants for the rest of our lives. Like we owe it to women to take their abuse. And we don't. I don't owe it to black kids to take their abuse. I sure as hell don't. When I was a kid, I had to deal with racism because I was in a very racist system. I understand that I didn't put those black kids that I was locked up with in the system. I met them in the system. Obviously, somebody else locked them up. But when your judge is white, your public pretender is white, your county attorney is white, and you get railroaded, and then they stuff you in with a white kid. Yeah, you've just dealt with a whole bunch of racism, and now you're wanting to give it back to somebody. Is everybody like this? No, thank goodness. Thank goodness not everybody is like this. But there does get a point where you do have to set the example. You do have to give at least something back to them. Or they're never going to understand how hurtful they are. If you do it back to them, these things that they tell you that you need to just shut up about and you just need to go to the back of the bus, if they do it, it's somehow magically okay, isn't it? Now, which they are we talking about? Because we've talked about 5 or 6 different groups since I started speaking. Which they? A lot of folks want to get pissed off because they is supposedly racist. Well, it's not racist. If there's 5 people right across the street from me, and those 5 people lit a dumpster fire right over here, and I call the cops and I point them out and I say, those people over there, it doesn't matter what color they are. It doesn't matter what gender they are. That is the group I'm pointing at. That is the group that I am speaking about. That is very specific individuals. If they have names, I'll even tell you their names. When it comes to BLM, it's turned into a racial hate group, and that's not okay. I don't support the KKK. I don't support the Airheadian Brotherhood. I sure as hell am not going to go supporting another racist hate group. I also absolutely will not stop fighting for black rights or LGBT rights. Why? Because those are human rights, and human rights are my rights, or at least they're supposed to. I know so many women who have beaten on their boyfriends or husbands for long periods of time, but then when the cops show up, the dude's the one who gets arrested. Whoa, hold on a second. Hold on a second. That ain't right. It is not right for you to lock up the victim because he has a penis. It's not okay for you to ignore the victim because he has a penis. Oh, God. Oh, oh, but I need a new back. With a lot of groups that we have blamed the entire group for the actions of just a few. Now let's try applying that to BLM. BLM has, well, members of BLM have committed more hate crimes in the last couple of months than most of the United States has been capable of in years. And it's amazingly, it's not white people who are perpetrating this insane amount of racism or this insane amount of sexism. That's not to say that white people aren't taking part in it. That's not to say that white people are not equally as guilty of it. It's to say that BLM are going after the wrong people. And they're shaming the other victims, claiming that the other victims can't be victims because they're not black. How insane is that? It's fucking nutty. When it comes to saving lives, the first thing we got to do is understand that, well, the people we may not think of as human because we were taught differently, they're still human. Their lives still matter, regardless of their skin color, regardless of where they're from. You know what I'd really like to do? There was a 9-year-old boy here in the United States. He made an algorithm to be able to find some ancient Mayan and Aztec cities based on constellations. And he was able to find 2 or 3 of them off in the jungle, so far off in the jungle that nobody's ever been to those areas as far as white people are concerned, or even Hispanic people. There might still be natives living in that area, but nobody goes there because it's too thick of jungle. But I thought it would be great to go down there to a place like that. Walk off in the middle of the fucking forest and die. Maybe it'll take me 20 years to get malaria. Maybe it'll take me 20 minutes to get malaria. But you know what? Until I get malaria and die from it, I think it'd be great to go see a lot of old ancient stonework nobody's taken a look at in hundreds of years. That's one of my special interests, ancient building. You know, the reason I really got into that is because I wanted to help people, starting when I was a little kid in the system, getting beaten up for the color of my skin, getting raped by staff members, getting fucking raped by other kids in the system too. I am the change I want to see in the world. When things this horrible happen, yes, you have every right to shoot back. I should have picked up a gun 4 years ago and started blasting police in Boulder, Colorado. That's what I should have done. Sorry, 5 years ago. It was October 18th of 2015 that I fucked up my back severely. I still have a fucked up back. Sorry, I got to sneeze. Oh, God. I kicked out some nastiness and fucked up my back. Or hurt my back. We don't tell boys and girls the same thing here in the United States. We tell a boy who's been victimized that he shouldn't have been there. When a girl is victimized, we tell her friends, you should have watched out for her. Well, that's the female friends. The male friends, they're in a lot worse trouble because they were supposed to watch and protect her. A lot of girls here from Chapel, Nebraska. Mind you, I came from big cities. I let them know when they graduated, hey, there are some ground rules you might want to follow at college. Don't go to parties by yourself. Make sure that you leave with the people that you came with. When you go to another room, bathroom, whatever, take someone with you. Anyway, we need to, first of all, require the burden of proof from women. And second of all, when women destroy men's lives the way that mine was destroyed, there do need to be consequences. If there would be consequences if she had a penis, then there should be consequences. The fact that there generally are none is completely fucked. Everything is a man's fault. Everything is a white man's fault. So any woman out there can go blame any white man and it's just magically fine. Any black person out there can go blame any white man and it's just magically fine. Meanwhile, we ignore the burden of proof. Like I'm looking at the Zaid Atkinson thing and I'm finding zero evidence whatsoever that was racially motivated. With Ventus, yeah, a lot of that shit was racially motivated. Thing is that my guilt was assumed. At no point in time was I allowed to defend myself. I was assumed guilty and railroaded because I had nobody in my corner. That's how American justice works. It's not justice. If you are by yourself, if you are alone, you are the easiest person to victimize. The police know this. The general public knows this. BLM knows this. The knows this. Meanwhile, the most victimized are not black people. They are foster children and former foster children. Then the homeless. And then those deemed disabled. That's right. The disabled are victimized more than black folks, and there are less disabled people in the United States than black folks. Imagine that. Number 3 on the list is homeless. There are less homeless people than black people by a lot. Homeless people account for 2 to 4% of the population, depending on what you consider homeless. Black folks account for 12% of the population. Meanwhile, 81% of the incarcerated population are homeless. 81%. Now then there's those folks who want to say, oh, well, the only reason that black statistics are so screwed up is because black people get railroaded. So obviously, if a white guy doesn't get convicted or have to spend any time until his third offense, and a black person is sentenced to 15 years for their first offense, and it might even be a misdemeanor that they have gone out of their way to try to portray as a felony. And then they torture the guy into submission. Does that mean that black people are committing more crimes? No, it doesn't. It means that they are convicted at a much higher rate. But we're talking about a 5-to-1 ratio if it was a per capita thing. If there was an equal amount of black people to white people in houses, then it would be a 5-to-1 ratio. However, the homeless, it's a 346-to-1 ratio. But instead of understanding that, we victimize the homeless. Even black people victimize the homeless with the same excuses that people use when it's a black person. Oh, well, look how much trouble they get into. Look how many crimes they commit. Bitch, wasn't you the one who was just complaining about how a black man doesn't get an honest day in court? Nobody who's poor gets an honest day in court. Nobody who is poor gets an honest day in court. Poor and alone just means you are easy to railroad. Now, if you got a lot of family that shows up to fucking court with you, it might make a difference. If you got witnesses that go with you who aren't too afraid to speak to the police, it might make a difference. The fact is, what I should have been doing from day one is killing cops. What I should have been doing since day one is killing people like Ted Bollinger and Tim Beeson. What I should have been doing is killing. Society teaches me that I should have done. But then, that's what American society thinks. That's what the American will say. We should put bullets in these child molesters. We should chop their balls off. We should give them lethal injection. We should hang them. We should chop off their heads, and so on and so forth. But they don't actually do it, do they? If this is what we should be doing, and you're not doing it, but you say that we should be doing it, why would I want to do it? Why would I want to do such a thing when you are too cowardly? I have the ability to expose a lot of child molesters. But with my name tarnished the way that it was, that just ain't working out, is it? You slander a man's name, and you can do anything you want to him. You call him mentally ill, you can do anything you want to him. If he's homeless, you can do anything that you want to him. Matter of fact, when you're homeless, shit, same thing goes for women. If you're a woman on the streets, people can rape you and get away with it. The cops aren't going to do shit. They're not going to fucking care. Now, how fucked up is that? Then we have police officers who are taking part in, and they have a police officers union. They take our tax dollars to victimize us, and then they take more of our tax dollars so that they can get away with victimizing us. And there's a lot of folks who are like, well, we can't defund the police, this will happen and that'll happen. Motherfucker, we can replace the police. We can replace every single officer. We can replace them. There are several cities who got rid of their police agencies years ago, now use private security, and there's a lot less of this police corruption shit going on there. Why? Well, for starters, because these security agencies are required to have body cameras on at all times while on duty. What is it that I've been trying to get to happen for over a decade? Police need to be forced to wear body cameras, and they cannot be allowed to turn them off. Now, this doesn't just apply to the homeless. This also applies to when they show up at your fucking house and your wife just beat on you for 30 fucking minutes and your face is all fucking shredded. And these cops are dragging you off. Well, hold on a second. Where's her marks? I want to see her marks before sending him to prison. I want to see her marks before locking him up. If he's the one with marks all over his body, and he's the one who did not fight back through half an hour of being fucking punched and hit and smacked with things and having things thrown at him, then no, he's not the fucking bad guy and he shouldn't have been fucking dragged off. Right now, there's a guy here in Chapel who's got to deal with a bunch of bullshit with his kids because his ex did some really fucked up shit. She decided that right after having a baby, that she was going to get drunk again and get busted on the side of the road with 5 kids in the vehicle because she was passed out drunk. Meanwhile, her ex, who she's been stalking for several years, he doesn't call the cops on her. And he should. Every time she comes over here to do that, she brings over the kids and says, hey, I want you to watch the kids for a bit. The only time that she brings over the kids is when she's using them as an excuse to stalk him. And that's fucked up because he wants to spend time with his kids. And he spends all of that time with his kids listening to her fucking bitch. He should this and he should that. Like, come on, lady. You're trying to say that he's not being a responsible daddy. And the thing is that he is. He bought this property so that his kids would always have a place. Something that my parents would never do for me. They're too fucking selfish. This guy has been working on this house so that those children will have a place to stay. And he was even willing to let his ex stay. But the fact is, she screwed them both. And even worse, the system screwed them both. How is that? Well, this drunk woman who got busted on the side of the road, her kids went to her sister's house. The cops took her kids to her sister's house. Didn't bother letting this guy know until almost 3 days, 4 days later that she had been arrested and that the kids were in the system. Why is that? Because her family doesn't care about the father. All they hear is her nonstop bitching about how she's in love with him and how he should do this and how he should do that. And because she's female, she must be owed this. No. This guy's trying to take care of his fucking kids, and you bring him over the kids, and he's trying to play with his kids, and you are bitching at him about every goddamn thing. No matter what, you are fucking nonstop bitching at him. And then he's got to go through a bunch of court shit. This is his kids. These are his flesh and blood. These are his offspring. And he has to jump through a bunch of court hoops to try to get his kids back. Despite the fact that he was not with that woman when she did that. He wasn't with her physically. He was not with her emotionally. They're not a couple. They're not together. And she gets it in her head that she can get drunk and then come over and shame him. Shame him into getting back together with her. No. No. Ash D typed, regarding showing evidence, isn't there legal technicalities that differ in every state when it comes to showing evidence? Like CCTV footage of abuse can be admissible because of privacy laws. We don't have laws in the United States, Ash. We don't have laws. We have laws that are written down on paper that don't actually apply anywhere else. Jurisdiction is one of those things. That's where it differs from state to state. Police, for the last 3 years, almost 4 years now, have used jurisdiction to prevent evidence from being shown. What they did is manipulate the law. See, when I say we don't have laws, I mean it. We have loopholes. If those loopholes allow you to twist, contort, and manipulate the law as an officer in order to get away with breaking the law, then we have major issues. At no point in time did jurisdiction make any difference when they wanted to railroad me. But when it came to showing evidence, that is when they started throwing all this shit in there. When it came to me showing evidence, for them, it's okay. For them, it's okay to slander my name and illegally even prevent me from going to court, which they did repeatedly. It's either they prevent me from going to court and showing evidence, or my public pretender doesn't show up, or my investigator doesn't show up. And meanwhile, this whole time, I knew what the fuck was going on. This whole time, they're telling me that they can't do things that they have done for others. If it's against the law and you did it for others, then you broke the law and you deserve to be in prison. Plain and fucking simple. A man can be convicted on a woman's opinion without ever having a day in court. Case in point, right here. I never got a day in court, not even once. That's not to say they didn't schedule court dates, and that's not to say that I didn't go to my court dates. That's to say the kangaroo court isn't a real goddamn court, and that's all we have in the United States. Fuck this country.